This is probably the most common use case for force post. By using this, you can automatically set the remember me value to true in a post request payload. This essentially tricks the server into enabling a persistent session for the user, even if they didn't select the remember me option during login. This can be particularly useful when targeting workflows or maintaining longer user sessions. Force post can inject extra post parameters into a request. Basically, it's adding values that the original application doesn't anticipate. This could be used for bypassing security checks or enabling more hidden functionality. For example, you might inject a parameter to reveal an admin feature or disable specific protections. This use case is about adding control to modify requests beyond their expected occurrences, which make it a flexible tool for specific scenarios. Another thing I really like using it for is modifying login credentials. A particular example is using the feature to alter credentials before they're sent to the target site. With it, you can edit sensitive fields such as usernames or passwords, perhaps to test variations and manipulate account access. You can even use force post to redirect credentials to a defined destination for further analysis. This kind of customization allows a broader range of control, especially when troubleshooting fishlet setups or testing unique workflows. Manipulating form submissions by forcing post requests is a technique that allows you to gain direct control over what gets sent to the server. You would deploy the script to modify the values of form fields, then you can add or remove fields entirely, or even redirect the form's action link to an alternative endpoint. This is useful in scenarios where specific data needs to be injected or altered. Again, it all depends on your use case and engagement context. You need to pay attention to what the main goal is with the engagement. Obviously, we want credentials and cookies, but you can do more than just that if you know what you're doing. For example, you could adjust a field to include hidden data or override predefined values for a more tailored submission process. It allows you to customize how most form submissions behave, giving you more control over the way data flows between the client and server. Nowadays, client-side validation is commonly used to enforce rules like acceptable input formats, required fields, or specific restrictions before a form can be submitted. Websites often implement these controls with JavaScript or HTML5, which can make it seem impossible to send data that doesn't meet these rules. However, with force post, you can bypass these restrictions by directly modifying the payload sent to the server. This means you're not limited by the front-end rules and can submit data that might otherwise be blocked. For instance, if a form enforces a specific input format, you can skip this entirely by modifying the payload directly. This is useful in cases where client-side validation fucks up or where you're working with forms that have strict requirements on user input fields. To wrap this up, the point of discussing these examples is really to stir up some ideas about how you can use force post in your own setups. The examples I've mentioned are just a starting point for context. Of course, your use cases may vary, and that's the beauty of using force post. Similar to JavaScript injection, it's flexible enough to fit into a wide range of applications and situations. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is understanding the power of direct manipulation and how it can open up new possibilities for customization and control in your engagements. We'll dive into a more complicated practical example of using force post in a fishlet in a bit. I'm just trying to get you to think creatively about this type of shit before moving on to the next part of the course.